The story would be online within the hour. While Victoria Sterling orchestrated her corporate coup, a different kind of warfare was being waged in the digital realm. Calvin Torres, Skywings' IT director, sat in his office staring at his computer screen with growing unease. Sterling's instructions had been crystal clear. Erase all digital evidence of the discrimination the Williams twins had faced. But something about the request felt fundamentally wrong, not just ethically, but professionally. He'd worked at Skywings for 12 years, building his career on integrity and technical excellence. Now, he was being asked to compromise both. As he hesitated, his phone buzzed with a text from Sterling. Status update, now. The pressure was mounting exponentially. Reluctantly, Calvin began the process, accessing the security camera systems first. He could mark footage as corrupted, a common enough occurrence that it wouldn't raise immediate red flags. But as he initiated the command, a notification popped up on his screen. Access denied, security protocol alpha active. Calvin frowned. He had administrative privileges that should override any standard security protocols. He tried again with the same result. Then he noticed something else. A small icon in the corner of his screen indicating active monitoring of his system. Someone was watching his actions in real time. His phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Torres?" came the voice when he answered. "This is Maya Williams. I believe you're trying to access security footage from Chicago O'Hare Airport." Calvin nearly dropped the phone in shock. "How did you get this number? How are you monitoring my system?" "I'm something of a programmer myself," Maya replied calmly. "Dad's mentioned you before, said you were one of the most ethical people in the IT department. That's why I'm calling instead of just logging your attempts to alter evidence." Calvin's mind raced. He hadn't considered that David Williams's daughter might have technical skills of her own. "Look, this is a misunderstanding," he began weakly. But Maya cut him off. "No misunderstanding. I've been backing up evidence all day. Every interaction, every recording, every ticket change is stored on a secure cloud server that neither you nor Ms. Sterling can access. I've also written a script that's scanning social media for any altered posts supposedly from our accounts. Did you know digital impersonation is a federal offense, Mr. Torres?" The Mid-Atlantic Airlines emergency board meeting convened virtually, with 14 grim-faced executives appearing on screens. Victoria Sterling wasted no time taking control of the narrative. "Colleagues, we face an unprecedented crisis," she began, her voice grave. "Our CEO has grounded our entire fleet over what appears to be a personal family matter, potentially violating his fiduciary duty to this company and its shareholders. The stock has fallen 18% and continues to plummet. We must act decisively." Several board members nodded in agreement, their concern evident. "I move that we temporarily relieve David Williams of his duties pending a full investigation into his actions today," Victoria continued. "This isn't about race, as some are already suggesting in the media. This is about sound business judgment." Before anyone could second the motion, David Williams appeared on screen, his expression calm but determined. "Before you vote on Ms. Sterling's motion," he said evenly, "I believe you should have all the facts." He pressed a button, and his screen was replaced by a series of documents and images. "What you're seeing is a preliminary report on discrimination complaints against Skywings Airlines over the past 7 years," David continued, his voice steady and professional. The board members leaned closer to their screens, expressions shifting from annoyance to genuine concern as they absorbed the information. "Discrimination complaints against our airline are 420% higher than the industry average," David continued. Internal reports documenting this pattern were systematically buried by previous management, many of whom were appointed by Ms. Sterling during her time as executive chairwoman. Victoria's face flushed with rage. "This is a distraction from the matter at hand," she interrupted. "Your emotional overreaction to your daughter's experience is costing this company millions." "My daughter's experience was not an isolated incident," David countered firmly. "It was a textbook example of the discriminatory culture that has festered within this airline for years. A culture that represents a massive legal and financial liability that has been concealed from this board and from shareholders." He switched to another screen showing pending legal actions. "These discrimination lawsuits represent potential liabilities exceeding $1.2 billion, none of which have been properly disclosed in our financial statements. That, Ms. Sterling, is a breach of fiduciary duty." 6 months later, Maya and Kira Williams stood at Skywings Airlines Gate 18 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, the very same gate where they had been denied boarding half a year earlier. This time, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. The gate agent, a young black woman named Jasmine Rodriguez, checked their boarding passes with a genuine smile. "Good afternoon, ladies. Atlanta today?" She handed back their IDs without excessive scrutiny, treating them with the same professional courtesy she showed every passenger. The twins exchanged glances. This ordinary interaction, unremarkable to most travelers, represented a profound transformation from their previous experience. They boarded the aircraft without incident, settling into their first-class seats as other passengers filed past. The transformation of Skywings Airlines over the preceding months had been remarkable, if not without significant challenges. The day after their experience had gone viral, David Williams had made good on his promise not to simply fire the employees involved. Instead, he had created what became known as the Accountability and Change Council, a diverse group tasked with completely redesigning the airline's approach to customer service and anti-discrimination practices. Brad Morrison, Robert Chen, Christina Torres, and Jennifer Walsh had all initially resisted participation, viewing it as a humiliating punishment. But David had given them a clear choice: participate genuinely in creating meaningful change, or face immediate termination and potential legal action. Reluctantly, they had joined the council alongside civil rights experts, customer service specialists, and former victims of discrimination. The early council meetings had been intensely difficult, with the employees defensive and the discrimination victims understandably angry. Progress had been slow and emotionally exhausting, but over time, something unexpected had emerged: genuine transformation. Forced to listen to story after story of discriminatory treatment, to face the real harm their actions had caused, the employees had begun to recognize patterns in their own behavior they had previously rationalized away. Now, 6 months later, Skywings had implemented the most comprehensive anti-discrimination program in the aviation industry. Every employee underwent mandatory training that went far beyond superficial diversity exercises to address unconscious bias, systemic racism, and bystander intervention techniques. An anonymous reporting system allowed passengers and employees to flag concerning interactions without fear of retaliation. Most importantly, these reports were investigated thoroughly, with real consequences for verified discrimination. The airline had also made fundamental structural changes. Hiring and promotion practices were redesigned to eliminate bias. Customer satisfaction metrics were adjusted to ensure they didn't penalize employees for enforcing policies equally across all passenger demographics. And perhaps most significantly, executive compensation was now partially tied to discrimination metrics, creating powerful financial incentives for leadership to take these issues seriously. Financial analysts had initially predicted disaster, with some forecasting that Skywings would lose up to 30% of its market value as it diverted resources to social justice rather than operational efficiency. Victoria Sterling, who had been forced to resign from the board after overwhelming shareholder pressure, had been particularly vocal in predicting the airline's downfall. But something extraordinary had happened instead. After an initial period of adjustment, Skywings' customer satisfaction scores had begun to rise dramatically across all demographic groups. Employee retention improved significantly, as staff reported feeling more valued and less conflicted about their work environment. The anticipated mass exodus of business customers never materialized. In fact, several major corporations specifically switched their travel contracts to Skywings, citing its ethical leadership as aligning perfectly with their own corporate values and diversity initiatives. The Twins' Atlanta flight was approaching its final descent when the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International in about 20 minutes. Current weather is sunny and 72 degrees. On behalf of myself and First Officer Thompson, as well as our cabin crew led by Head Flight Attendant Brad Morrison, thank you for choosing to fly with us today." Kira glanced up in surprise at the familiar name. Moments later, Brad himself appeared from the forward cabin, making a final safety check before landing. He paused beside the twins' seats. "Maya, Kira," he said quietly, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "I wanted to thank you personally. I know this is your first flight with us since everything happened. What you did changed this airline, changed all of us. It couldn't have been easy to stand your ground that day." The twins hadn't expected this direct acknowledgement. They had chosen this flight deliberately, facing the scene of their previous humiliation as a form of closure. But they hadn't anticipated such a heartfelt encounter. "It wasn't easy," Maya agreed thoughtfully, "but necessary things rarely are." Brad nodded, understanding completely. "For what it's worth, I'm deeply sorry for my part in it. I told myself I was just doing my job, following procedures, but I was enforcing a system that was fundamentally broken. You showed me that, and I'll never forget the lesson." After Brad returned to his duties, Kira turned to her sister thoughtfully. "Did you ever imagine, when we were sitting in this terminal 6 months ago, that this would be the outcome?" Maya shook her head slowly. "I was just hoping to get to Atlanta and tour some colleges. I never expected to help transform an entire airline or start an industry-wide conversation about discrimination." Following Skywings' lead, several other major carriers had implemented their own anti-discrimination initiatives, though none as comprehensive. The Department of Transportation had launched formal investigations into discriminatory practices across the aviation industry. Congressional hearings had put airline executives under intense scrutiny, forcing public commitments to meaningful change. As the aircraft touched down smoothly on Atlanta's runway, Maya thought about the incredible journey that had brought them here. The discrimination they had faced had been real, painful, and traumatic. The battle afterward had been exhausting and emotionally draining, but the outcome had exceeded anything they could have imagined. Their father had told them something during the darkest days of the public controversy that now seemed prophetic. Transformation requires courage. The systems that need changing most will fight hardest against that change. But if you stand firm in your truth, even when it's difficult, even when it's costly, you create the possibility for something better to emerge. As they collected their belongings and prepared to disembark, Maya caught sight of a young black girl, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, seated with her family in economy class. The child was looking around the cabin with pure excitement and wonder, experiencing air travel as the adventure it should be, rather than a potential gauntlet of humiliation and discrimination. That child would never know what had happened at Gate 18 6 months ago. She would never know about the battles fought and won before she ever set foot on a plane. But she would benefit from them nonetheless, moving through the world with one less barrier, one less source of fear and anxiety. And in that moment, Maya knew with absolute certainty that everything they had endured had been completely worth it. The twins stepped off the aircraft into their bright future, forever changed by their past, but not defined by it. Behind them, a transformed airline continued its own journey of evolution and growth. And somewhere in corporate boardrooms across America, executives were learning a powerful lesson. Discrimination wasn't just morally wrong, it was terrible business. The world was changing, with or without them. Those who adapted would thrive. Those who resisted would be left behind as relics of a past that fewer and fewer people were willing to accept. As David Williams had told that final emergency board meeting 6 months earlier, this isn't about politics or ideology. This is about treating people with basic human dignity. Any company that can't grasp that fundamental principle doesn't deserve to survive in the 21st century. Skywings Airlines had grasped that principle, painfully, but thoroughly. And in doing so, it had secured not just its moral standing, but its economic future and industry leadership. The transformation through adversity was complete, and it had all begun because two teenage girls had refused to accept being invisible, had refused to accept that discrimination was just the way things are. Their courage had changed not just their own lives, but the lives of countless others who would travel after them. In a world that often feels divided and hopeless, their story reminds us that individual courage, combined with principled leadership, can indeed create systematic change. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept injustice, document what happens, and never give up on the belief that things can be better. Maya and Kira Williams proved that transformation is possible. One boarding pass, one phone call, one act of courage at a time.